Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Man Alone YouTube channel on the Man Alone Networks, your home for solo RPG talk on YouTube. Today, we're going to be talking about using the tarot deck as a tool for solo role playing or tabletop role playing in general. And, actually, before I begin, I just want to say I was at my friendly local game store and cannot believe I actually found Tefrotic Nightmares, the sort of burnt bound supplement, Morkborg supplements, Pirate Borg supplement that has art from Johan Noor and Luke Gearing, who did Pirate Borg. And I literally had to open each of these pages individually because they were like burnt shut. It was incredible. And I just think this is a great omen. You know, we're talking about divinations and omens. I think that's great. So keep your eyes peeled. A future episode of that. But today we're talking tarot. Okay, so I guess a disclaimer up front. I don't really know if this is necessary. You know how they say, like, for your own health problems, consult your doctor. Well, for your own divination problems, go ahead and talk to your own sage, prophetess, psychic, oracle. We're mostly going to be talking about tarot as a tool for tabletop role-playing play. That said, in order to explain some of the ideas, I'll probably have to share a little bit about how tarot cards are used, what they might mean, because that is actually what I deduce to be the best way to teach you how to use this as a tool would be to talk about the cards themselves and the sort of assets and resources that are available on each tarot card. I know it sounds like a little bit sacrilegious, disrespectful to talk about assets on tarot cards. A lot of people put a lot of special meaning on them. You know, we could talk a little bit about the history of that. The truth is that tarot cards originated in the 15th century around probably what is now Upper Italy, and they were a playing card game. Now, they were a very popular game. They were also a often owned by the wealthy. And there was, during the Renaissance, there was this kind of fascination with Egyptology and going back and pulling some of the old imagery from there and imbuing it with meaning. But mostly tarot cards would be seen in the same way that we see like poker cards today, playing cards, in that it was a game. There are different suits, and in fact, the playing cards of today are influenced by tarot cards. Now, I think that tarot cards they do have energy. I think that they do have prophetic capabilities, whether that is a sort of spiritual power or just a tapping into the sort of like undercurrent of the human subconscious and the archetypes. I'll leave that up to you to decide. And so, but the bottom line is, you know, it's not like a holy book or anything like that. It doesn't indicate a religion or anything like that. That said, I think that the more reverence and respect for any sort of things, especially things that were carefully crafted as tarot cards were, at least the deck that we're going to talk about, the rider-waite-smith deck, you know, that sort of thing is what allows us to create ritual and solemnity and observance that puts us in a better state of mind to receive the information that is being given to us by the universe. Now, I'm kind of a bad person to talk to about this because I have a quite syncretic view of these things and believe that everything can be prophetic or speak to, our subconscious and what is dwelling there. I think the California raisins, if anyone remembers California raisins, they were dancing raisins. You could use those for prophecy. Okay, before we get wildly off track, I want to start with a little bit of background, and definitely do not want to go too far down these holes in terms of talking about tarot historically or whatnot, because I just would not be the best resource on that. However, in considering the best way to relay this information to you, I do think it is important to know about the deck, because if I were to just tell you what each card means, or if I were to sort of create some shorthand system for using tarot in solo RPG play or RPG play, I think it would be very limiting. I think that you would get a lot less out of it it would be circumstantial, right? You would pull a card and then you'd say, "Oh, this card means this," and it would turn into nothing more than sort of like a different type of dice oracle. So what I do want to do instead is talk to you about tarot, give you this background so that it becomes a tool that you're more familiar with, and you begin to see the multi tool that it is. And it is, in fact, I think, one of the most powerful multi tools in terms of randomization, more powerful than dice, more powerful than playing cards, more powerful than AI. I think tarot cards are the new AI, although they're not quite new. So, like I said, the earliest instance, 15th century, Upper Italy, they're using them as playing cards. They move to France, and France, again, I think it's safer to say, has more of this fascination with Egyptology and starts building in some of this imagery to them, because prior to that point, um, the at least most of the cards, what we call the minor arcana cards, the ones that are not the 22 significant major arcana cards like the face cards, they didn't have much to them, right? So like, I mean, this is very pretty, but like a 7 of cups was just 7 cups, right? So now in the Rider-Waite tarot, for example, the cups are going to have a whole scene built around them, and it is that scene that you'll be able to use to extract a lot of information. So I don't want to waste our time by painstakingly go through, but if I could find, all right, well, we'll give the 3 of cups. So for instance, the 3 of cups, rather than just having 3 cups, has a scene with some people who might be celebrating, toasting to something. There's some vegetables on the ground. There's some vegetables being hidden behind the back. All of these things are giving us information about what is going on here. And I think this came into a full fruition of sorts in the early 20th century. I think it was 1908, 1909. That was the development of the rider-waite-smith deck between Mr. Ryder and Miss Smith. She was the artist, and he was the one that was kind of behind these things. He added some Catholic imagery to some of the cards. He removed Catholic imagery from other cards, and basically I would say, other than maybe the Marseille or the Aeon deck, even with those in mind, the latter being Aleister Crowley's deck, I think that the Rider-Waite deck is the most popular and most commonly like default tarot card type. Okay, when you get a deck of tarot cards and they come in whatever nice little box you have, if you get the standard Rider-Waite deck, which is like $10 maybe 12 on Amazon, no matter what, regardless of what you get, even if you get Magical Kitties Tarot or the Incredibles Tarot, whatever you get, most always you're going to get some little tiny booklet with this. And this is actually never fails to be a pretty darn good starting resource. It's going to give you some brief information on what all the suits mean, what each of the cards mean, and it's going to start you down a path of being able to use these cards for interpretation. And I do prefer to say interpretation instead of divination or anything like that, because I don't claim to use these to tap into some, speed force or something like that. That would be interesting if the Flash from DC Comics was just gave up running for tarot. Okay. So big picture here. First of all, I got a question from more than one of you when I mentioned tarot about like what's a good resource to start with. Well, I truly do feel like, and this is kind of the boring answer, but I think the best thing would be to actually get your mitts on a tarot deck and just start looking through them and familiarizing yourself with the imagery, the way that they are divided. And to see, which tarot deck do you like? I actually do recommend the Rider-Waite deck. I look, different strokes for different folks. Everyone marches to the beat of their own drum. I do think though that the more sort of if you can get tarot decks that are less filled with any sort of culture or pre-filled with any sort of theme, they're actually going to be better and more useful in terms of using them in whatever capacity that you do. So if you get, like the badass chick's guide to tarot, and it's like, well, that's cool. If you like that aesthetic, that's fine. But what we're looking at in these tarot decks are universal human archetypical meanings. So as soon as the human subconscious, once an individual subconscious invades that space and sort of floods that with its own personality or ideas, I think we're dulling down the potential here to tap into that archaic language of the soul that doesn't really know what, it means to be a modern witch who takes no guff, or things like a magical kitten tarot or something like that. It's also the cheapest. Now, when I got my tarot deck, I was under the impression, this was what I was told, and now unfortunately I pass this neuroses on to you, that you are not allowed to buy your first tarot deck, that it has to be bought for you. I actually don't know where I heard this. Other people have heard it though. So for years, I read about tarot and watched videos on tarot, and I would keep mentioning to my friends just how much I wanted it. Never my family, because I grew up in a Catholic family and my mother said that these were evil. But I would mention it to my friends, and it was a good 4 or 5 years till one of my good friends finally said, "Hey, I got you a tarot deck." And I said, "Thank God, finally I can get it." And it was only then when I went, "Why the hell did I do that?" So if you are equally superstitious, I don't know, fine. Maybe I could start a tarot exchange group or something on here. But they are available very widely online. You can get the standard Rider-Waite deck on Amazon. You can get almost, and TTRPG, they have different tarot and stuff like that as well. There's going to be, I took notes for this video. How about that? That's a man alone first. This is going to be basically in the Rider-Waite deck, in many decks. There's going to be 78 total cards. 22 of them are going to be what are called major arcana cards, and 56 of them are going to be minor arcana. And so the major arcana cards tell a story. They have very strong symbolism. They usually have a focus of a specific person or scene, whereas the minor arcana cards are going to have one of the 4 suits, which is swords, wands, cups, or discs, or pentacles, and they will have a scene all of their own, but it will more be like, just an ascending order of 2 of swords, 3 of swords, 4 of swords, etc. So the story that is told with the major arcana is one of what we say innocence to enlightenment. You start as the fool and you work your way all the way up to the world. Okay, we'll talk about that. In terms of, I got, like I said, a couple emails that said, hey, what's the best resource to buy? So if you go on to Amazon and you look up like tarot, how to start, the first thing that you're going to get is the Big Book of Tarot by Joan Bunning. And this is a very good book to start with. With a little bit of guidance from yours truly, I think you can get the most usage out of this. The way that most people begin approaching tarot is they go, well, I got these 78 cards. I better get busy memorizing them. And not only is that ineffective and tedious, but I also do not believe it's the best way to learn the tarot, because the cards should not really ever be looked at as like these individual entities. Well, I shouldn't say they should never be looked at that way, but they all have an interconnectedness. They have a theme such that if you start to learn what the different components and the different factors on each card mean, you can start to induce a lot more information from that. So this was, I would say, the book that allowed me to understand things like how to do different spreads, what the different suits meant, what the different, like inverse, what it means when the card came up upside down, and maybe a little bit of the history and the story with the major arcana cards, right? The whole back section here is different spreads. There's different placements. The usual one would be like 3 cards, past, present, future. But of course, there's all sorts of triangles, horseshoes, a Celtic cross, all these different things. And again, if you, I'm damn certain that it will not take you long to find anything in terms of that online outside of the RPG space. Now, the book that took my tarot reading to a more thoughtful, intentional level, where I stopped like learning, this was like the textbook, and then started thinking about the reading itself and how to understand the cards better and how to filter it through my own intuition. Nancy Shavik, The Tarot, is very good book resource on using tarot, what it means for your own enlightenment, for your own path. I will. I don't want to lie ever on, even if you'll have no way of knowing that I'm lying, but I try not to do that. Just because when I was little, I was a big liar, and so I try not to do these little lies. So I will say that I used to do tarot readings every morning, and I found it very, very generative. I found it very helpful, clarifying, mindful. It helped me to see things a lot better. And the reason for that, again, is not necessarily magical. The reason for that is humans have a really hard time seeing things inside themselves. It needs to be coughed up and out and in the world for them to fully understand something. And I'm no different. And so maybe I was conflicted about something, a difficult conversation I had with a friend, and I sort of tucked it to the back of my mind. And then something in the tarot spread would come up, and I would have to confront that. I'd say, you know what, I've been pushing that away. That's bothering more than I think. I really need to figure out what to do with that, or figure out how to confront that, or if I'm going to confront that or not, etc. And so this book was helpful in this. What's interesting, two things that are really interesting about this book. The first thing is it was sent to me in the mail, and I have no idea who sent it to this day. And I've called all my friends about this. It has my name inside. It was emailed to, or it was emailed to me. Yes, I printed out some postage mail. No, it was mailed to my home. And I'm sure it was somebody who knew me, but it's kind of spooky. The other thing, which I think is more incredible about this book, is it is an entire book that is written in this font. This must have been right when like new fonts were coming out and available. And people were like, oh man, we should use this like kind of fun little comic-y font. It's written throughout the whole book. It is such an incredible waste of space. You could probably condense this whole thing down to 4 pages. Anyways, as far as resources, I think if, you know, give a bunch of different things a shot. There's things at libraries and just tons of online resources now, so that unless you want something to read before bed or something like that, you know, you really can't go wrong. Just look for what's out there and what's popular. Because I don't want to continue or sort of strengthen the idea that tarot is this inaccessible, arcane, mystical art that, you know, only shamans and medicine men and stuff like that can access, because I think it's a tool that's there for everybody, as we'll see using it in solo play. If you are going to get in tarot for divination type reasons, I just want to say really quickly, something that I would recommend always to everyone is reading some Hermann Hesse. Hermann Hesse is my favorite author, probably the author that has blown my mind open the most regarding shadow work and seeing symbology, other than, of course, the OG, which is Jung. Unfortunately, before this video, I could not find my copy of Man and His Symbols, which I think in terms of archetypes, these eternal symbols, that is probably the best book for that. And I think there's a good audio book of that. Almost all of it, I think, is on YouTube, actually. And then also, if you are thinking about getting into the sort of healing arts of the soul or anything like that, I think a big part of the journey is confronting your own shadow parts. This has been the very positive, growth-filled piece for me. And it actually, my shadow work began... well, my shadow work began a long time ago, but like this sort of official, disciplined, guided by, you know, writers writing in that domain, started through tarot, because I started noticing that my shadow, which I wasn't identifying as such at the time, my shadow was sort of creeping into some of my readings, especially if it was readings for people who were close to me. I was not overtly manipulating them or anything, but I started to find that I would always look at it through my own lens first. And I thought that was very telling about how I see the world and how I see other people, is like, oh, I have to filter everything through myself. Like I'm the main character. I'm the most important thing. And to really serve people and be there and to heal, you can't always go through your scope first. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. I thought I would just mention those resources. This book, Robert A. Johnson, on Owning Your Own Shadow, is one of the best and tiny little book, but it is a really, really powerful book in that respect. Hey, consider clearing out your shadow. It'd help the whole world. It would help us all out a whole bunch. Okay, so In terms of where to start with tarot, I think a good way a good place to start would, in terms of RPGs, would be to talk about the other randomizing um, tools that we use. So obviously, the most obvious randomization tool that we use in solo play and in tabletop play writ large is dice, right? And dice offer a sufficient amount of physics-based chaos that it makes it gives us surprises. It disallows us from taking complete directorial control over a scene. If you're playing in a group of people, it creates an accountability and honesty, so to know that the GM is not always just like messing with you or have anything against you, right? It is the intervention of the external. It is the barging in of randomness and possibility. Okay, and obviously, there's a whole crap load of different dice that can be used to render different outcomes, to change the odds statistics. I need not go on about this for another minute because it is obviously condescending. If you're watching an RPG channel, or I'm sorry, if you're over 3, you know what dice are. So that's the most common one. Secondary to that, I would say, are playing cards, right? You are, especially we see this more and more in solo play. The 52 card deck, 4 different suits, 9 different numerals, the face cards, the ace, etc. And this allows another axis of randomness, right? So dice pretty much are a y-axis, right? Like you're going from in a d6, you're going from a 1 to a 6. Those are the outcomes. That's it. There's no like I mean, I guess you can add another axis if you're like, oh, the place that the dice lands in the table, although you're starting to add like less randomness then and more precision. But if you're like, okay, upper right quadrant, it means this, upper left quadrant that. But most of the time, 99.99% of the time, we only use dice on the y-axis. We're just looking at it as a quantity. Cards offer 2 new, well, I guess 3 new axes here, because you have numeral, you have suit, spades, clubs, hearts, diamond. You also have color, red, black. You could have orientation, which direction they're facing in relative to the person dealing with that. Although outside of face cards, or sometimes I guess that could be a little bit difficult depending on your deck if some of them mirror each other both ways. You could also, I suppose, have sequence or combination, right? And that's what games of chance are based on, like poker is the sequence of cards that you get. So right there, we're going up from one axis of just number to like 5 or 6 axes, okay? And I think this is the best way to case our conversation about tarot, is just to say that tarot, I believe, and probably even as I was making this list yesterday, I was like, I actually think there's even more than this. But I think there's about 11 axes that tarot allow us to tap into. We have the numbers. We have the numbers, people. We have the numbers. The numbers are there. Now, we have the numbers piece of it. We have the arcana, which is it major arcana or minor? We have the specific card, right? Like which actual card. Every single card is going to be different in the tarot deck. Let me just move this out of the way here for a second. Let me pause. All right, I just want to clean up my area a little bit here. So we have, let me just kind of, in these individual cards, we have the Arcana. This would be a lesser Arcana card, right? It is the 6 of Swords. We have the card itself, the scene that's on the card. We have the suit, which is swords. We have the number. We also have the direction that the card is facing, right? The direction the card could be like this, the card could be like that. And also, in tarot, the direction that the people on the card are facing also has relevance. Usually, the left is to the past, to the right is to the future, and the middle or the center is for the present, okay? So we have, I guess we could say, direction, orientation, but also positioning, and sequence in the same way. If you do, sometimes people will just draw one card. I would do that sometimes in the morning. but usually you'll see at least a 3-card spread, and so the sequence of where the card shows up, what direction is in yet another axis that we have as a randomizing variable. And then in terms of the contents of the card, and I apologize, let me see if I can move this a little bit to get rid of some of the glare. Okay. In terms of what is on the card, you have one additional category is the presence of natural things, right? So like animals, vegetables, plants, stuff like that. And nature, water, mountains, trees, those actually have meanings to them that we'll talk about. And once you know those meanings, you can put together a card and get a pretty good idea of some of the base nodes of information that it's giving off. And that's going to make it a lot easier to use it in a gameplay fashion than if you just were like, well, I guess I got to keep studying these cards till I know exactly what they mean. And like I said earlier, not only inefficient, but not a good way to go about it really, and sort of missing the point, because it should be about the encounter with the card, and it should be the discovery of the card. And so if you are sitting staring at a card until it becomes rote memory, I think it does lose some of its novelty, because the final thing, I'll jump ahead just a little bit, the actual final piece of the axis that tarot gives us that perhaps, our basic playing cards do not give us, is our own intuition, our own reaction to it. I suppose we can do that with regular playing cards, but I don't know about you, but when I see like a jack, I'm not going, oh, I wonder what that jack is doing later today. I wonder who that jack's father was. I don't give a shit, right? And so instead, with tarot, I am wondering, what is this queen doing? Is she making some sort of proclamation? Is this person helping people escape, or is he moving these people to new lands and trying to protect them, right? These are actual, my own relationship and reaction to them is a valid axis of discovery. And this is especially important for solo play, okay? The other things, just to really quickly mention before we move on, is we talked about the organic things, trees, mountains, water, plants, animals, vegetables. The other one is like man-made stuff. So structures like buildings, thrones, tables, things like that. Those will also have significance that is non-irrelevant, right? It is not just, our impressions, and some of it is straightforward, but some of it is not so straightforward because it has a deeper meaning. The suits, each of the suits has a different meaning, and the suits all have a correlation to one of the elements, right? So the sword will usually be pointed up, not always, as you can see here when it's pointed down has some significance too, but swords are related to the air, and they are also related to an aspect of the person. And so swords, air, and mind. A wand, on the other hand, is something that you can, light on fire. And so that has to do with fire. So the suit is wand. The element is fire. Fire has a specific meaning in this. And the part of the soul of fire is like passion. Okay. And then cups or chalices also is one of the suits. And chalices, if I can find one. Yeah. So chalices are associated with water, right? I mean, not a big surprise there. You fill them up with water. And so if swords were about the mind and rationality and air, and wands are about fire and passion and the heart, then cups are about water and the subconscious, the great ocean, the mind, right? And finally, you have pentacles or discs, which certainly get a bad rap. Again, completely invented by sort of like Victorian card manufacturers. But the truth is that these are actually called, rather than pentacles, they're just as often called discs or even coins. And if you think about the star inside of it, it's not some sort of eldritch abomination. It's actually just showing the unification of the other elements together to create spirit. And the way I think of it is an arrow pointing in all directions around you, and that is why it indicates sort of trappings. Okay, the element for it is earth, and it has things like your job, your home, your establishment of your reputation in your community, things we might call our trappings. Okay, and so. The suits and also colors. Each color on the card has different meanings. Where the color shows up has a different meaning. And we'll talk a little bit about those color meanings. And I've really whittled this down as much as I can to where it can still be useful and give you a good start. But I don't want to like make this into some sort of SAT prep session or something like that. So, and also size, internal positioning, prominence, things like that. I would say is the last thing that is an axis of randomization, right? What is up front? What is in the background? What can the person see? What can they not? What's the largest object? What's the smallest object? Those kind of things, right? Because I suck at YouTube and making videos and editing rather than just posting these on the screen, which would make the most sense, I'll just kind of list off the ones that I said here. So the arcana, lesser or major or lesser arcana, the actual card itself, the suit of the card, the number of the card, right? Both the major arcana have numbers from the Fool at 0 all the way up to 21. And then the lesser arcana have a system that is very similar to playing cards, right? They go up to a certain number, and then they begin to have a like trump or court cards. In tarot, there'll be a little bit of differences, but usually you'll see the page, the knight, the queen, and the king. And in terms of those face cards, those have meaning as well. The page is sort of representative of child energy, an innocence to it, an excitedness. They're ignorant, but not because they're bad or willfully ignorant, just because they're new to the world, they're new to whatever it is, and they are just taking it all in. Whereas the knight has that very adolescent, teenage energy. I want to go out. I want to take the world by storm. I want to show who I am. And then the king and queen would both be like the apotheosis of the feminine and masculine energies, right? And this really does, I think, in terms of integration of feminine and masculine, which is what I believe is in a healthy society, there is a good mixture of the feminine and masculine energies. In every person, in different ratios, but in every person. And I think that these cards really do a good job of showing people, maybe if you're out of touch with one of those, maybe you can get some insight into the ways that you're out of touch with those and how you can harness those powers. Look at me, I already got pulled off our list here. Okay, arcana, card, suit, number, the actual scene, the direction of the card, both where the subject is facing as well as where the card is in relation to other cards, the sequencing, the positioning and orientation, the presence of natural things like nature, animals, vegetables, plants, man-made things, structures, buildings, any sort of invention or constructs, color, size, prominence slash I always say like maybe internal orientation of the card. And then finally, the last piece is our own intuition, our own feelings, what we put into it, our reflection, our reaction to it. Okay. And from a solo role-playing standpoint, I think that this would be a good time to talk a little bit about now, this is not ideas that I've come up with. It's just kind of the way I talk about them might be a little bit unique because I have thought about it before. But so far, I have just talked about randomization. And randomization is the first level of change that we apply to these static rules of role-playing games, right? And so as we're playing an RPG and, we have an encounter or something like that, and we look we know that we have gone into the observation tower and we find something there. We go to these randomizing elements, whether that be dice or cards or tarot cards, and then we further have these randomizing resources in the form of oracles, tables, and stuff like that we can compare our results to. But randomization, I would say, is sort of the lowest conceptual level of whatever that process is, that process of change that provides the novelty and surprise and discovery of role-playing games. And honestly, it is that discovery that we're most excited about. Because if there wasn't that element of discovery, an RPG would just be a book, right? It would just be a book, or it'd be a radio play, which is, valuable and entertaining in its own right. But truly, if we are playing an RPG, we're playing it for a reason. And that reason usually has something to do with the thrill of discovery, the thrill of tension that you can't predict all the time. And so we use that to randomize it. But above randomization is synthesis, right? And so randomization would just be if you're shuffling a tarot, a lot of people would say you shuffle it 4 times for the letters of the tetragrammaton or the directions of the wind, whatever you prefer that. And you don't, if you have any like religious belief systems or anything, you don't have to violate any of those for this. You just do what you're comfortable with, because really I don't see this as unless you put a lot of credence in the papal magisterium. Maybe you do. Okay, so the first one would be randomization. I pull a card. I say, okay, this is the card I got. Maybe I look on a list and I say Knight of Cups. Okay, that means that I advance to the next hex or whatever it is. Synthesis, though, is more complex, and a synthesis involves the combination of 2 ideas. And this could be very overt or on the nose, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be an abstract synthesis. So I'm just making this up, but say we had a game that this means like you're advancing to the next hex. And this one means anytime a sword shows up, it means there's something to do with combat or weapons. I might say, okay, Knight of Cups plus 7 of swords. That means that you have advanced to the next hex and you need to drop something or else you're over encumbered. And I've just, and maybe I've come up with that on my own, or maybe I'm playing some sort of game that has a system that I can actually look on a table and it says 7 of swords, over encumbered, whatever that means. But either way, this is a new type of spark here. It's a new type of creative spark. A little bit of magic starts happening when we synthesize. This adds to a complexity. Now, we can still break it down like into ones and zeros if we wanted to. We can see the whole world is like the cascading green numbers of the matrix. But the harder it gets for our minds to natively calculate the odds of something, the more magical it feels. And so while we might, have this notion of like, oh, I really need this card, there is a 1 of 78 chance that I will draw the sun. And there's some nice randomization there. But then when you talk about the chance that I'm going to, wow, that was actually wild. The sun and the moon together, the odds of that start to become, factorial and exponential. And it starts becoming more and more difficult to not only calculate that, but even start to fathom it. When you start thinking about combinations, actually that might be something. I think that would be 78 factorial. Why don't we give that a run? 1 second. Okay, I'm going to, if you do 78 factorial, it is some scientific notation number that is like 1.132 times 10 to the 1/15th. I don't know what value that is, but looking at 2 card combinations alone, there are over 3,000. There are 3,003 2-card combinations, right? So that becomes even more a bigger sort of thought, and as that thought becomes more vast, the more often, unless we are any of Matt Damon's characters in any of his movies, the more we're likely to just kind of not even worry about it, not think of it, and just look at it as a pure, maybe dare I say, fateful outcome. But there is now a 3rd level, right? So there is the randomize, synthesize. I sound like a motivational college football coach. Randomize, synthesize. And the 3rd one being alchemize. And No, that just does not mean just like adding a third card. That would be a further synthesis. Wow, what a wild set that is. But that would be a further synthesis. Alchemization involves what I would call some element of transubstantiation, some element of sublimation. You are taking what is there and you're seeing beyond that. And in fact, there might even be a sort of fourth form of this that goes a little higher than that. But just to talk about this alchemization, the alchemization doesn't just take the value of the cards. It doesn't just take the pictures on the cards or the colors. Let's get a different suit here. It also takes the ideas from the cards, right? And so to if I were to randomize this, I'd say, okay, this is a 10 of sticks, and maybe I'd look up wands, and whatever that means. And then this is the 2 of cups, and so that means something else. And now I'm going to combine those 2 ideas and come up with this third. Okay, so that's nice. That's a synthesis. But then this alchemization involves like actually looking at this and looking into this. So for instance, and I never know the right way to say this, but like the catechus caduceus here with the lion head, that is this sign of healing, but also of health, of union, of balance, of wholeness, right? And so now we're starting to see here that this picture, which is just like these dudes with oversized cups, they might be exchanging them. They might be comparing them. They might be balancing them. They might be trying to get the same amount of water in both of them. And this is where alchemy happens, because I'm no longer bound to any of the measurable empirical factors of this card. I now am going into the territory of symbology, numerology, and also just like my own feelings. And so I kind of want to not use these just so that I can actually like see if I can do it in real time, so that it doesn't look like that I'm just giving myself an easy way out here. But let me do one more shuffle, just because I think I divided these along suits and arcana, and I think they're a little bit stuck together. So okay, we have the 7 of wands and we have the king of swords. Okay. And so right away, I know that we have this 7. The higher that it moves up the number, the more. Oh, look who's back! Are you kidding me? Come on, Maurice, not on this video. The higher that number is, the more it's going to fulfill whatever that archetype is. And we can see 7 is right in the middle. And so wands having to do with fire and passion, this is sort of the middle place of passion, right? When you have not harnessed it yet, but it's very strong, this can turn into conflict. And I do see conflict here, right? Whereas other people might see someone rallying some troops, or some people might see somebody throwing a javelin or something like that and competing or proving themselves. And then with the King of Swords, right? The swords are this air metaphor. They're going to be about ideas, rationality, thoughts. There's clouds. Clouds will often indicate in tarot cards, when those show up, something about revelation or emerging from the fog, and like something's being revealed. Okay. You have trees. Trees are also going to mean, they could mean a variety of things, but trees could mean something like stability or generativity, like generational meanings over time, things like that. And so you are able to combine all of these things together. And then you're also looking like this king, who's this sort of masculine, structured, authoritative energy, is looming over all of this other stuff, is much larger than everything else here. And so I begin to put these together. And now, this is where the alchemization would start to take place, where I stop looking at these and trying to figure out what they're trying to say. Instead, I'm looking at these and figuring out what I know them to mean, right? And that it has some sort of personal meaning to me. But basically, what this says is that there's going to be a period of passion or fervor where I'm going to rely on the heart, where I'm going to rely on that feeling of youthful urgency, the struggle. And then from there, I will be able to emerge into a place of stability, to a place of ruling with fairness and justice. And so right there, that might be an arc for one of my characters that I have just has joined my party, or it could be a story that an NPC is telling you. And I think that's important too, is that it can be both of those things. So if I kind of like, try to clean my palate here and say that instead of a person that joined my party, um, I instead drew these, and what I said was, oh, I've entered into this shop. What is a good way for me to get, say I need some sort of antidote, and I don't have a lot of money right now in my in the game I'm playing, and I say, okay, what's the pathway forward to deal with this? What way am I going to deal with this? And I draw this and this. Am I going to say, oh, well, what this means is that the shopkeeper is going to have some passion and urgency, and then one day the shopkeeper is going to be a king? I mean, maybe if that still makes sense. I doubt it does. But instead, I might say, you know what? This is the past, right? Because it's to the left. This is the future. In the past, I would get in arguments, and I would end up like trying to intimidate or bully people to get what I want. But instead, if I give a reasonable request, if I hold myself out as somebody who is rational and willing to talk, I'll get what I need. And so I decide with advantage that I am going to talk to this shopkeeper. And even though I don't have enough money, I would like to buy an antidote. Okay. And what does that, and do they give it to me? Yes. But they say, look, I will give it to you now. You have to give me any of the gold you have, and then you have to bring me back the rest of the money by the end of the week, or else I will have to put out a medieval search warrant on your ass, whatever that might be. Okay. And so it's adaptable, and that's the power of the alchemization. And I would say that I hate adding stuff and media erase in videos because, I run the risk here at 46 minutes in of saying something that I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But I think there probably is something above alchemize, which is like, maybe I would like to call it transubstantiation, where I stop even thinking about what all this means. I stop trying to put together a reasonable explanation of this. And instead I look at the cards and I say, and I just I allow there to be a sort of an unfocusing. If you stare at a magic eye poster, you finally relax your eyes and you just kind of see the thing that is there. And I think if I do that with my mind's eye and I stop trying to be like, oh, what do the discs mean? What do the pentacles mean? Okay, these people are in the front. We got dogs here. Instead, I just go, okay, what's going on here? And I let my subconscious speak to me, and I say, you know what this means? I think this means that there's some treachery afoot. I think that somebody who I trust very much is not trustworthy. I think that I need to be more on guard, not paranoid, but I think there is about to be a reversal of a relationship in this game. What do I have to base this on? I don't know. As I'm saying this, I could see that a little bit is because I'm so habituated to tarot that I probably saw these discs and I was like, very often this means money. This looks like some sort of merchant stall. There's a child right here who is sort of seeing the truth of something. Dogs will usually represent friends or companionship, but also the instinctual knowledge of when there's something to fear, right? A dog is going to start barking and you might not, what is it, girl? What is it, lassie? And so my mind maybe put that together on a very subconscious level, and that's what I came up with, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I just went with what I thought. And I think that sometimes that is a really great way to go in solo play, is to not say, oh, I want to make sure that I'm interpreting the cards right. Well, there's 1.35 times 10 to the 1/15th possibilities of what these cards could be saying. Maybe your subconscious mind is able to do a lot of that work for you, and then whatever comes up is right, and you don't have to question that. It just feels right. Okay. So I think that that's a pretty good sort of overview of tarot. I just want to for the latter third of this video, I want to talk about what some of these things on the cards mean so that they can be put to use in solo play. Now, to divide, once again, I think I've stated this in different ways in this video, but just to put it more in focus, I really do think that when we're using inputs, when we're using oracles, the two ways we use them are either mechanically or narratively. Okay, uh, and so the mechanic way of using these is to resolve uncertainty, is to randomize numeric outcomes, to determine inputs so that I'm not having the same sort of experience every time, to generate adjectives about a person, to generate features of a weapon, to generate effects of a spell, whatever that might be. And then narratively is where we're using these resources to advance the story, to tell us more about the story, to tell us more about the history, the background, and what's going on, and to fill in that canvas that is usually filled in by the GM, because the GM in solo play is obviously us plus whatever randomizers we use, oracles, dice, cards, tarot, whatever that is. Okay. The last pitch I want to just do about something before I go into what things mean. Actually, this would be a good place to start. So the first thing I want to talk about is numbers. And I think that one of the things that my mind used to shut off for when people would talk about, like on a YouTube video, they'd be talking about something and then they would get into numerology. That would make my eyes glaze over. And maybe that just made your eyes glaze over right now. So that's fine. Just take a note of this. Give me a shot here. See if this is a little different than what you've heard before. And so I would find it very trite. I would find it very, it had that the feeling of it being just completely inconsequential, right? Like there would be this meaning added to these things, and I would be like, come on, this is so arbitrary, I guess would be the word. But I read a very interesting article, and unfortunately I can't remember what it was, but this was some years ago, where numbers do have a sort of archetypal meaning to us. The one is the loneliest number. Numbers have personalities to us. And I think a lot of things have definitive personalities. I don't know about any of you, but I still, to this day, have impressions of like what kind of guys each of the shapes are. Like circle, I think is kind of a show off. Triangle is like a cool dude who just kind of hangs out and like tries to be himself, but sometimes gets in the way. And right, square is somebody who is kind of always trying to be on time for class and raising their hand and stuff like that. I used to have an equal system for all the swear words when I was little. I had shapes in my head for each of the swear words, and this is what happens when anything has a meaning that transcends just the verbiage. And the more I started reading about numerology, I think that in terms of the numerals, in terms of 0 to 9, there is meaning there. There is some kind of way that we feel, either partially consciously or just at the edge of consciousness, about each of those numbers, that can be used. And then if you want to do tarot type numerology, you just keep trying to find the numeral no matter what. So if you get like a really long number, you wouldn't say, oh, what's the meaning of the number 1742? You would instead do like 1 plus 7 plus 4 plus 2, and that would be what, 14? Yes. And then you would add 1 plus 4, and that numeral would be 5, right? And 5 does have a meaning. And even if you don't have definitive meanings in your mind, there is pretty, I would say, well, actually, no way. I'm not going to say there's broad consensus around numbers, but in the same way that like there is a bit of a consensus around like, what does it mean to be a Capricorn? What does it mean to be an Aries, a Gemini? I think there are some very broad ways that different numbers are interpreted. So 0 would be like the beginning, the origin. And then 1 is the first step, right? Like 1 is the first thing that exists, right? It is the one in the chaos of non-existence. 1 announces itself, and 1 is just like, yes, existence, right? Looking at binaries, One is a complete refutation of zero. Zero says, you don't exist, there's just nothing. And one says, oh, but here I am. Two is opposition, binaries, opposites, conundrums that are derived from opposites. The duality of life, that light and dark, and that opposition and attraction are sometimes come out in ways that you don't expect. Balance, harmony, could be peace, could be conflict. Um, Either any of those could be from two. And then three is a proliferation, right? So we're thinking of like the numbers expanding from two. We see a third point now. Suddenly, one and two have this third here that there's no perfect way to split things in half anymore. And so the three is usually associated with newness, of creation, of abundance, of growth. And then four, we have this square position, right? And now, like, four is a structure. Four is starting to be a house. And so four is strength, stability, solidness, consolidation, and also like measuredness. Okay, because a square, definitely more so than a circle or nothingness, and a little more so than a triangle, a square represents a consistency. There is a consistent measuredness to that. Now, it does get a little bit maybe less natively tenable as we move to five. And I guess that makes sense because five is actually the first number that we don't always see right away. Okay, like if we saw, one marble, our brain is not going to take much brain power to go like, okay, 0, 1, 1. Same as two. Two, we can kind of get that right away. Three, it's very easy to remember a 3 or even 4-digit PIN number. But when we start thinking about five numbers, this is where things start getting like a little less automatically countable. And because of that, five will usually mean a disruption, chaos, something unexpected, something that was not accounted for originally that has shown up. But then six, again, shows how quickly five can be brought back into structure. And so six is often like a renewed wholeness, a return to plenitude, to safety, maybe success through adversity. I'm not going to talk about all of the rest of the ones. I think I will lose too much of the audience because I think some people just don't have much patience for that, and that's totally fine. But if you are interested in that, I think numerology is worthwhile, and it's another way for you to use, one of these axes with a tarot card, okay? Similarly, colors. Now, a lot of the colors are derived from like a corollary, whatever the element is or whatever the suit is, but then we can also look on the cards themselves. Now, I do have some color blindness issues, and so if I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but I think it's pretty safe to say like the sky is blue, water is white and blue. Usually, I think the division would go like this. So in these cards, in the rider-waite-smith deck, fire is red, yellow, orange. Air is like lighter blue, gray, whites. Earth is brown and green. And then water is, very strong, rich, navy blue, stark white, black, purple, swirling, right? And again, that's the soul, that's the subconscious, that's what's dwelling beneath. And so, whereas we could see red, orange, and yellow very much fan a flame of color out before us, and they make a lot of sense, and they almost seem like old buddies. The four colors of water, they're a little bit suspicious of each other. Like, they know each other from around the block. Like, royal blue and purple are old. Like, they know about each other, but like, they're not best friends. They're not hanging out all the time. In fact, some people think that they don't get along because they're a little bit too similar. So a lot of these, again, as I go through these colors, I won't go through all of them, but you can see that some of it is baked into you. Like right away, what is red? You know what red is. Give it a guess. What's red? Yes, red is vigor. It is ardor. It is emotion, passion, intensity. It could mean health, vitalness. Orange, right? Orange is a passion, but does not have usually have as much of a violence to it, right? It's more of a yearning, a need, an ambition, enthusiasm. Green could be jealousy, or it could be fertility, or it could be harmony, or it could be prosperity, depending on what color your country's currency is, I suppose. Blue is usually the spiritual understanding, a lifting, peace, philosophical considerations, intuition, or even psychic energy. White would be purity, innocence, hope, gentleness. Gray is sort of dullness or ambiguity, unsettledness, stress. Black is negativity, sadness, mourning, obscurity, but also mystery, possibility. And then brown would maybe be same as green, but something like stability, roots, materials, wholeness, stuff like that. And I'd say the only one that regularly surprises me in a lot of the tarot resources is yellow, because I think in at least the West, we associate yellow with being scared. But I think it is related by opposite, by contrary, because yellow usually is listed as some sort of like confidence, self-esteem, having a conscious mind, communication, cooperation, stuff like that. And so again, you have access to all of these colors on the cards as well as these suits. And so you want to say, oh, what's my character's personality like, or what's their temperament like right now? Okay, so we just kind of like go through the deck, and then maybe we flip one over, and like the first thing that comes up is, to me, a gray, because almost everything looks gray to me. I have protanopia. And so maybe that says, oh, there's maybe some depression, maybe some mourning, maybe there's some bitter nostalgia going on, etc. All right, so there's colors, numbers. Let's see what else we have here. I want to talk about the major arcana cards last, but I just want to. I talked about the suits. I talked about. Okay, we could talk a little bit about symbology more. Sorry. So the suits, right? We have the cups for water, the wands for fire, the swords for air, and the discs or pentacles for earth. And each of those four elements are also going to indicate different meaning. Okay, so water. Water is very prominent in a lot of images right here. This is the Two of Swords. You have water behind the person. The person is blindfolded. They're holding two swords in a cross pattern, and there's a under not fully developed moon and some rocks. This is a perfect example of a card that I can construct. Rather than having to memorize the Two of Swords, I can construct a meaning from it. Okay, so water, that refers to our subconscious mind, depth. It depending on like what is containing the water, it will talk about like the vessel of things, how things are being held, how knowledge, how information is being used. Oceans will usually mean like a subconscious. That's like that which is not readily apparent on the surface, that has to be plumbed from below. Whereas like ponds would be something more like serenity or being mindful, or a river would be like change and transition. But the ocean, it has the depth to it, right? The ocean, we associate depth, knowledge, lost knowledge, the unknown. Okay. And then in the back, we have, these mountains, or they could be hills, but it's just a matter of magnitude. So mountains will usually mean like a challenge, to be confronted by a hardship. Hills would be like a little less severe. So these look more like hills here. The blindfolds come up, and this means often ignorance and a bit of willful ignorance, or low insight, not truly seeing the choices correctly, not conceptualizing, not seeing yourself in the problem correctly. And so what is starting to show up here is you have this person who is probably lost because they're trapped between two different decisions, and they're using their swords to make this decision, right? Their swords are their rationality, their mind, and they think that that's helping them. But what it's in fact doing is sort of cordoning them, right? It's not allowing them to fully participate and make the right decision, because instead of looking into the great pool of the subconscious and seeing what is in one's mind and their spirit and their soul, what they really feel. They're sticking to this rationality, and that in and of itself is both blocking them and blinding them. Okay. And then on top of that, you see the moon. The moon, I will say, gets a little bit of a bad rap in tarot, unfortunately. But perhaps because the moon usually means, how can I say, like well, the moon is like feminine energy, right? The moon cycle. And there is some genderedness here that I think is like a little bit unfair in terms of, when we talk about feminine energy in tarot, it not in the cards itself, but I would say like some older resources very much lean into like treachery and conniving and stuff like that. And I think there are better ways to see that energy, right? That energy of relationships and communion and speaking without speaking and knowing without saying and stuff like that. And so the moon, this feminine energy, it often means concealment. It could mean like having an inner world that's blocked off, illusions, right? Not seeing the truth, seeing illusory experiences instead. Misunderstandings, shared memory between many people. And because this moon is a partial moon, what this might say here is that you only have part of the story. You only have part of the knowledge. And because of that, you are unable to make an informed decision on this. And so you need to look into your intuition to realize like what's going on. Look at the reflection of that moon. You're going to find it in yourself. And if you really stop and think about it, you'll know that there's a person who's not being very truthful with you. But because you're being willfully ignorant of that, you're ignoring that. Just turn around. You'll see. You know who it is. It's your uncle Balthazar or whoever, right? And so, each of the suits has, water is subconscious, depth, but depending on, what the body of water. Fire is usually this like double-edged sword. Ironically, it's not a sword, but it's like this creator and destroyer, right? Fire can cook, fire can burn down a forest. So it's the primordial creator, the Promethean creator, and also the destroyer. If it's a torch, that usually means some sort of change or guidance to reach something higher. Just any sort of flame is passion, desire, but also comes with it this need to be controlled or contained. And then the sun would be considered an element of fire. That's very often in many cards. And when the sun shows up, that is usually like a new beginning, enlightenment, but also a warning, right? Like Icarus, don't fly too close to it or you might get burned. So just be respectful of that, but know that that's, this possibility for a big change. Air is more rationality, ideas, thoughts. Air is very often represented by clouds. This is the Ace of Cups, which is a water card, but we see that in almost all of the aces, this hand is emerging from a cloud, as the air is in terms of ideas, irrationality, the cloud is like this thing is emerging from this obfuscation. It is showing up in a big way. Interestingly, a lot of people want to know what this M means on the cup right here. From what I understand, and I've looked into this a couple times, it was never supposed to be an M. It was actually supposed to be like two serpents, but they would just be like illustrated in a way that eventually it looked like, they were crossing over in the middle as an M. But we have a dove. A dove is an example of peace, of purity, of purification. And we have this water coming out. The water, again, is the subconscious, the mind, the soul. And there is some peace that is being brought to the soul and putting you more in harmony with the subconscious, the ocean of the subconscious between. But even more so, there's lily pads. So this is a pond. You're having serenity. You're going to find peace. You're going to find a respite. It's going to be fine. And so we've just constructed that based on what we know of the suits and the elements. And then finally, earth. Again, air would be like rationality, plans, thoughts. Earth is fertility, but also foundations, whether that's roots or literal foundation that you build on. And it's also material possessions. And this doesn't always mean greed, but it can. I think that it's a more measured look at possessions in terms of the tarot, right? I mean, again, this is in 1909. This was not the moment of like hyper 1980s hyper capitalism, where uh, American psycho economy is going down. And so people were looking at things to make their family safe and to make sure they had enough and that they were leaving a legacy and that they were being good stewards of what they had. And so the earth represented by this, if you have mountains, like I said, that's challenges, hills, less so. Paths, if there's any paths, that usually indicates that some preparation needs to be made, or that if you don't prepare adequately, you're going to not be able to overcome the challenges ahead. So it could mean discipline, steadfastness, persistence. And then let's see, fields. Fields are like reaping, sowing, taking time to do things right, doing things in advance so that you can enjoy the yield later rather than doing things last minute. And I can go on and on. Angels show up a lot. The infinity symbol shows up a lot. The caduceus, wreaths, a globe, right? And the size of the globe matters. Let's see, what about structures? Walls, churches, castles, bridges, pillars, towers, gateways, right? Gateways are usually opportunities or initiations. Towers are significant in which they are something that has a moment in which no more growth is possible, and then the tower starts to break down. And this is significant because let's move on to the major arcana. Now, the major arcana cards are going to be more so these very vivid scenes or very individual people. So they're even more powerful than the court or trump cards. And like I said before, they tell this story. They tell a story starting with the Fool. And the Fool is labeled 0. It's the first major arcana card. And the Fool is a youthful child who's starting off on this journey. They're looking to the left, which could be their past, and they're saying goodbye to their past. And they're also holding this white rose, right? And in terms of flowers, the lily is a feminine energy flower. It represents purity, innocence. And the red rose is a masculine courtship flower. It usually means like undeniable passion or need or desire. And the white rose, I would say, bridges the gap between that the white rose, maybe represents like, well, white in and of itself is that like innocence and everything like that. But at the same time, the rose is, it's almost like painting over with white the strength of that red rose. And so a white rose would be like a softening, a transformation. And there's definitely a transformation going on here. The Fool is about to embark on this incredible journey, and their clothing's a good thing to look at in these cards. It's a very fine clothing. It represents benefits in the past, or privileges that were had, or that this person came from this place that maybe they were used to being comfortable, and now they're about to embark on something bigger than that. And of course, the sun, this fire that indicates a new beginning, a new possibility. But also, we have to be careful about what's up close. And then in the back, we have this very choppy, brackish water. And we're still looking for another way to use the word brackish other than water in the English language. But there's going to be trials and travails ahead, and it's going to throw the things in the soul up into upheaval. But there's this little pup right here. And dogs, again, both mean friendship, companionship, but also someone who will let you know when you're in trouble or when you're not safe. And so this is really the Gandalf, the people we sort of met along the way, the guides, mentors, wizards, mages, in whatever form that those take. And so you're probably inferring, if you're used to Joseph Conrad and the hero cycle, you're probably starting to see a lot of this involved in that too, and you are not wrong. Okay. So let me just name a few of these here. I'm going to pause this just to pull the major arcana out. Okay, so I separated out the major arcana, and as I was doing that, I just kind of want to reorient myself. I do want to be cognizant of like providing you with tools for solo play, and so I want to make this worth your time. But I really do think that having an introductory grip on how all of this works allows you to harness. I got a fan on too high over me. Allows you to harness the possibility of these cards and start putting them to use. But it's up to you how you use that, because if I were to go further than that, I would be actually like being prescriptive about a system, and that would actually be a game or a game system or something like that. And so I stopped short of that. I'm yet to see a really good game of the tarot. Now, one of the things that's hard is tarot is in the public domain in the US, but not in the UK. And so I think there might be some difficulty with like standardizing the use of a tarot deck within a game that can be sold internationally, but I digress. So the major arcana cards are going to tell this story of the Fool. Oop, 1 second. Okay, so starting with the Fool, and then the first card is the Magician, and the Magician has pretty much all of the suits right there, right? You have the wands, the swords, the cups, the pentacle, and there's this infinity symbol, which means, infinity, right? There's this ongoing sort of journey that's happening all the time. It happens with every person. It happens with multiple times with individual people, etc. And the Magician is really harnessing their power to go on this journey. This is seeking this inner strength, this willpower. The High Priestess is a feminine embodiment of intuition and of knowledge without saying. So it's said, like, when you encounter the High Priestess doesn't, you may ask any question and the High Priestess does not respond. You can ask the question again and they don't respond. You ask it again and she doesn't respond. And then you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It is that sort of the channeling that knowledge that's already inside you. And it's also sort of taking the invitation to this journey, the initiation to it, and using your intuition. That's a lot of into words, but usually the symbols here is Boaz and Joachim, which would be the two pillars of Solomon's temple that indicate the wisdom of both like yes and no, right? And there's wisdom in both of those answers. The Empress would be the feminine embodiment, of abundance, of celebration, right? The celebration of going on this journey. And then the Emperor, though, is the masculine energy, the authority, the structure. This is what you're going to have. Yes, you're going to have a great adventure. You're going to be renowned, but also this is what your requirements are. This is what you need to be doing. The Hierophant, which used to be like, I think, the Pope. The Hierophant is about wisdom, tradition, morality, especially structured morality, codices, written morality, the accepted ethics of a place. And then the Lovers, this is about union, harmony. When this comes up in a divination draw, this will often indicate something about relationships, but it's not necessarily always romantic or sexual. It could be a union of two disparate ideas. It could be the union and prosperity of two people who are coming together to make a business deal, and it all depends on the context of the other cards and who is asking. Right, the person who's called the querent is the one who is seeking this illumination. The Chariot is usually forward progress, determination, drive, aggressiveness, and again, we see this like duality here, this black and white and the inverse of that. And I've always felt that this means with these sort of sphinxes that like progress does not always take the direction you think it is going to take. Sometimes you go in a completely different direction than you expected, but you have to understand that all of that is a form of progress. Strength is strength, but also compassion, the strength in compassion, the strength to have restraint, and to not, fight this lion right away when we see something that is, when we're confronted by something else that's strong, we have an urge to vanquish it or neutralize it, but we forget that there's a possibility of combining strength and becoming even stronger. The Hermit would be, this searching, And perhaps this is on the journey this time where it's like, wow, I have encountered a lot of interesting people and really motivating ideas, and I'm full of this energy and zest. But now I've just like stepped out of the Shire here, and I'm alone. Like I am on this alone. I've got a really big task ahead of me. And the lantern, though, represents the light. And then the wand held by the hermit represents this passion, reconnecting with your passion, why you chose to do what you did, and will keep you going forward. Wheel of Fortune, obviously, is something I think to tabletop players is of interest, right? And this would mean there's some sort of change of fate, of destiny, of direction. And I'd say right here you can start to imagine the ways that a tarot deck might be used for narrative mechanics inside of a solo game, right? Because I can see myself right now just using these as major arcana cards and completely leaving it up to a card draw to just say, okay, what happens next? And whatever I pull out, I use that to inspire me. Death. Now, a lot of people, this is a big butt of jokes, right? And a lot of like funny movies, it'll be like, well, let's see what card it is. Oh, you pulled death. That's rare. And then you pull another and another and another. And death, it could mean that, but death it's more abstract. It usually will mean like a resolution, a transition, an end. And if we're talking about like the fool's journey, you're going out on your own, you're following your passions, your guidance, and then sort of the chaos, all the chaos of the world confronts you. And this is when you sort of grow up and you realize, okay, I'm in it now. I'm in the shit. Like this is the real world. It's coming at me. And so that there is almost a death of the childhood. And we can actually see the children in this picture are yielding to death as it walks by. And we have this white flower that is death's flag to say like, hey, get in the back, all ye who have the purity and ignorance of childhood, because there's a new understanding. Temperance, balance, and health. The devil would be like being caged, being betrayed, having to make a decision where betrayal might seem necessary, but it's focused on materiality and the shackles that those put on us. The tower is like Babel, this great upheaval. All of a sudden, this grand vision that you're creating is just completely decimated by forces that are greater than it. You were a fool to ever think that you had any stability involved in this. So it's sudden change, upheaval, but also often revelation, right? And we even see the crown coming off here to say this crown, your certainty has been covering you. It's been stopping new information from getting in. It's actually been like almost a shield, and now it's time. You can't keep blocking out this stuff. You have to understand it. The star is very often hope, healing, renewal, a new path, following a star, following the North Star. We talked about the moon, and the moon, unfortunately, could sometimes mean a warning, feeling confused, feeling lost, or anxiety, if you're having anxiety about something. And so this right here, I think, is something that can represent in, for instance, solo play, maybe something is on the horizon, maybe something that you have suspected is going to happen, or maybe your character is just feeling that anxiety. It's developing in them. The sun, again, happiness, fertility, success, optimism. And then judgment, I skipped over. I don't know where judgment went, but judgment is judgment, right? It's a reckoning. It's heeding the call. It's absolution. It's a final decision point. And then you have at the very end. Oh, I skipped over the Hanged Man and justice. Okay, the Hanged Man is important as well. The Hanged Man is about letting go, sacrifice, right? This is a very strange card in that someone is almost being crucified upside down. But if you look at them, they're not sad. They're smiling. They're enlightened. And this is about letting go, letting the past go, and letting newness come in, and giving yourself over to that process and stop trying to cling on to the old understandings. And then the world is number 21, fulfillment, harmony, integration, the unity of all these opposing factors, unity of heart, mind, and purpose, fulfillment, integration of all of these things, right? And so, yeah, this is going to be a great narrative tool if you ever want to determine like the broad strokes of what direction the plot is going. I think that probably minor arcana are going to be more useful for these like micro plot transactions to decide, how does this person feel about me? What's in this next room? Is this object useful to me? And this, I mean, because this in a lot of ways does mimic the hero's journey, it could be interesting to actually use these to chart out the sort of progression of your character from the fool to the world. Now, we'd have to separate this somehow. I'm not quite sure how, because you wouldn't want to be like, okay, every card represents my next step. And so I'm the fool. I start out and then I shuffle and I get the world. I go, okay, it's done, because that's not a satisfying arc, right? There's nothing in between to get from the fool to the world and to inherit that world. I would be just, I think that tarot, again, is at its most effective when it's used at that level of sensation and intuition and transubstantiation, where you just allow whatever subconscious vegetables float up in your mind stew to take center stage. Because if these tarot cards are anything, they are evocative. Each of them I find to be a more beautiful Rorschach ink blot. And that, I guess, would be the last piece I would say, is you're always going to bring yourself and your past and your history into this. But where it could get interesting with tabletop play is then you can also take your character's point of view into that and see what this could mean for your character and see what sort of new developments are there. I encourage you to not always require an answer from tarot as well when it is turned or drawn. If you say, today, my party is feeling a certain kind of way, there's like a bad feeling in the air, and I need to figure out like what that is. Maybe you give it a shuffle, maybe with major arcana. Well, we could do either, but I just want... Major arcana has a very strong personality, so I'm not saying that wouldn't work for that, but I go, okay, a 10 of discs, and I go, well, what the hell does that mean? Put it right here. Continue your quest, see what happens. Because something, what I find most amazing is when this actually, you go, well, I don't know what that means, but I guess I'll just leave it there. And then all of a sudden later in your play session, you go, holy crap, that's exactly what happened. It continued to guide me, just because in the split second that your mind takes a picture of this, your subconscious mind is doing so much work with this in nanoseconds. That you're very often not able to see all of those tiny transactions, and it can influence you nonetheless. And the more that we use tarot or oracle cards or anything like that that is going to create these opportunities for alchemy, the more often we're going to have these enriching, spontaneous, random, hilarious, fun, surprising, engaging, heartbreaking, tense, beautiful scenes in solo play. So I encourage you to get yourself a deck of tarot, give it a try, see what it is, and let me know if you use tarot in any good way. Also, in the comments, if you could let me know if you have played any games that utilize tarot that are any good. I know that there's one called Anamnesis that's more of a journaling solo game. If you're interested in what I had to say here and you're looking for more, on buymeacoffee.com/manalone, I have a weekly podcast. We just uploaded a new episode yesterday. 55 and myself, we talk about 12 Years by Max Moon Games. My co-host 55 did a playthrough, which was very exciting to hear about. Hope you could be part of that. Or if you just want to be part of the club, you want to be up in the Man Alone Club, the podcast is $4 a month, whereas the YouTube membership gets you access to members only posts, emojis, your waffle badge. As you'll notice, if this is your first time, there's quite a bit of waffling in this video. That is only $1 a month. But yeah, let me know about your experiences with tarot, and I hope that this video was useful, and let me know if there's any other way that I could be useful. And you know that as I've been going through this, I've been thinking of a tarot-based solo game, but I'll put that one back in the easy bake oven for a while and let it come out later. Okay, well, I don't know what that meant, so goodbye. I should tell people, though, that I actually have psychic powers. Then people are going to start calling me. They want lottery numbers. I bit. I see the future. I mean, I see about 6 seconds into the future. That's it. But still, it's pretty cool.